Okay. So my talk is titled "The Battle for Kuala Lumpur," and this is Bukit Nanas, right? And here is Bukit Welt, which was called Bukit Timbalan. So as I understand it, of course, I'm not a native KL person, so some of you may know better. But as I've interpreted, the whole thing is Bukit Gombak. The end part is a small, like a ledge called Bukit Nanas. And the people who are Bukit Nanas call this Bukit Timbalan, which means the secondary hill. Okay, yes. So if you want to know more about the Klang War, you can watch Sabri Zain's videos. He has made 3 videos. He's done a really excellent job. You know, it's like a blow-by-blow account. And he started with the battle for Klang, and then the battle for Kuala Lumpur. And I think now he has put it together. It's called the the Selangor Civil War from 1866 to 1873. This is just about Kuala Lumpur. And how do I start this? This is a video. Oh, can you start the video? Yeah. Okay. So we have been going to the KL Book Fair, and then we would be passing this bridge, you know. And then as I looked at it, there's a source which says that Sungai Batu is Sungai Lumpur, and Sungai Lumpur flows into Sungai Klang. So when you look at this, it may have something to do with the gradient. That Sungai Gombak actually falls into Sungai Batu, and Sungai Batu is going straight. In fact, the bigger current is actually from Sungai Batu, and it goes straight into that LRT station, you know, under the LRT station, and then it comes out. So when we say that Kuala Lumpur is where Sungai Gombak meets Sungai Klang, it's sort of partly correct, but actually there is an intermediate section which is Sungai Batu. So after you see this video, let's go forward. Then you will see that if you come to this section, you will see that Sungai Batu goes straight. And that's the main river. And even though Sungai Gombak is much longer, but somehow, you know, it falls into, maybe it's something to do with the gradient. Of course, rivers have also changed over time, and I hope the KL people can look into it. Okay, can you see? Can you see it? Yeah. Okay, so I press this. This part is supposed to be Sungai Gombak, but according to this account, there's an account by someone who really was a native of Kuala Lumpur. He says, no, this is actually Sungai Batu. And another name for Sungai Batu is Sungai Lumpur. And that's why you have Pangkalan Lumpur. And Pangkalan Lumpur is in the old letters, like in the early 1870s. And then after that it became Kuala Lumpur, because it probably was pronounced Kalan Lumpur. And Kuala Lumpur, the British here, Kuala Lumpur, Kuala Lumpur. So this is, some new things that I want to introduce. There's this theory, which was actually first published in 2010 by Peter Turchin. It's called elite overproduction. And it may also apply these days. Elite overproduction is a structural theory pioneered by complexity scientist Peter Turchin. It describes a societal condition where a nation produces more potential elite members than its economic and political systems can absorb. So you can think of certain states or politics today, resulting in fierce competition, political fragmentation, and widespread social instability. So in a traditional, Southeast Asian context, when you have elite overproduction, you have a conventional war, right? And a conventional war is that, after you have this war, the elites fight it out, and then it will come to another new state of equilibrium. So from equilibrium, you have a war, and then it gets rid of certain elites, which is, they call it elite pruning. Then after that, it returns to a state of equilibrium, and then the winner, takes over, and some of the losers may even come to the side of the winner, right? so that you have a new status quo. Okay, so the pruning mechanism is that conventional warfare acts as a valve to release the pressures of elite overproduction through battlefield casualties, exile, or political subjugation. So the surplus is, you get rid of the surplus. The winner returns to equilibrium. After the siege, the losers surrender and for the most part are unharmed. Some go over to the winner side and the winner restabilizes the state. Okay, so in Klang, in the 19th century, you had a structural bottleneck. There were too many rajas and too few choke points. So the rajas get their wealth by controlling, Kuala Lumpur, Klang, Kuala Selangor, Kuala Langat. So they are controlling choke points. Unable to find a legitimate institutional avenue to secure his elite status, Raja Mahdi, he is the archetypal bypass dispossessed elite. And what does he do? He did exactly what elite overproduction theory predicts. He weaponized his royal lineage, gathered a faction of fellow discontented nobles, and launched an armed rebellion in 1867 to forcibly displace the incumbent elite, which is Raja Abdullah, right? Besides that, you have intra-elite division. These are the Orang Selangor versus the Orang Riau. So when they say the Bugis, the Bugis were the Rajas in Selangor. They're not the same because those people like Raja Mahmud, Tengku Panglima Besar, they are Orang Selangor. They were born here. Whereas, because Raja Jumat had made such a success of Lukut, a few decades ago, so these Orang Riau keep coming. There's many of them. Okay, what can I do? They become mercenaries. So this Orang Selangor, they are the established landed local elites, including the princes of Sultan Abdul Samad. They have actual stakes, they have ancestral land, they have property, their defensive strategy is surrounded around protecting the physical settlements, the assets, the critical hubs of Kuala Selangor and Kuala Lumpur. But the mercenaries, the Orang Riau, is a different story. So with the decline of the Lukut confused, a massive influx of brave young landless fighting men from Riau arrived in Klang and Kuala Lumpur, lacking inherited estates or institutional roles in Selangor. These surplus elites entered the conflict as martial opportunists, fighting for higher plunder and the chance to carve out their own fortunes in a congested political landscape. And also you have other elites, from Sumatra and, the Chinese heads of tribes and all that. But this is the one that I think people don't understand. Okay, I better stand here. Okay. So the pressure points, there's tin boom, there's enormous wealth, it attracts all these people. There's elite overproduction, okay? Then there's factional warfare, dispossessed elites versus incumbent elites. There's the Hulu-Hilir divide. The Sumatrans in the Hulu, the Orang Riau in the Hilir. When the Orang Riau went to the Hulu, when they were in Kuala Lumpur at the start of the war, and then they started to, do whatever they want, and that's how the war started, because they killed a young Batubara, and that's how the war started. Then all the Sumatrans, of course, will side with the Sumatrans. So then we have the alliance with secret societies, Haisan versus Gihin, and you have a spillover from the previous Pahang War. And then you have financing by transnational capital. These are the Strait Settlements merchants. And then you have all these creates state vulnerability to British intervention. So it starts out, the Klang War is so difficult to understand because it is very complicated. The first part is quite easy, it's just conventional warfare. Okay, so the first stage, the conflict operates strictly within traditional Southeast Asian geopolitical norms. Low intensity conventional war, fought over localized, I think you can read here, fought over localized economic choke points. So you have limited objectives, it's a local scope, and you just want to take over that choke point. And then you have positional riverine warfare. So this is relying on conventional defensive siege tactics. So you create fortifications, the kubu, and you create river blockades. This is the first part of the Klang War. And then the blockades cut off economic supply lines rather than, destroying everything. And then you have a segmented engagement because the elites and their men, the fighting men are engaged in the war. But the orang biasa, they just go on with their productive economic life. They are planting the paddy and, they are not it's not a full-scale militarization, okay? But the late stage of the Klang War saw the erasure of this civilian combatant divide, integration of external actors such as British colonial authority, the press, merchant lobbyists, foreign troops, including mercenary and mobilization of Pahang fighters, scorched earth tactics, destruction, industrial sabotage, abandonment of the rules of war. No more rules, okay? Anything goes. Okay, so just a brief timeline. The Klang War was the biggest civil war in the peninsula from 1866 to 73. So Raja Abdullah was actually given control of Klang and Kuala Lumpur, Klang River Valley, because his brother was Raja Jumaat, who was actually the most productive. He was controlling the territory of Lukut. At the end of the war, Lukut was given over. Actually, at that time was Selangor. So they were the son-in-laws of Sultan Abdul Samad. Okay, so Sultan Abdul Samad ascended the throne in 1857. Raja Abdullah and his brother, older brother Raja Jumaat, opened the mine in Ampang. Then, when Raja Jumaat dies, he left a power vacuum because he was actually the most powerful man in the whole kingdom. So Raja Abdullah appoints, this is where the commercial, the street settlements, commercial entities come in. Raja Abdullah, he doesn't have the backing of Raja Jumaat anymore. So he appointed Reed, W.H. Reed, and Tan Kim Cheng, Singapore Syndicate, to collect taxes. And that's where the trouble started. Because when Raja Mahdi, when he went down the river to Klang, they stopped him and asked him to pay tax. He says, you know who I am. I'm Raja Mahdi. I'm a prince. I'm exempt from taxes, which is by the custom, by Malay custom. And of course, these people from Singapore, they just got the hired guns and then, no, you have to pay taxes. So this is such an affront to him, that he was, eager for a fight. And then there was a skirmish outside Datuk Bandar Yasir's port. So Bukit Rosam is where the Maybank building is now. And it's overlooking the Kuala Lumpur. And so when there was a skirmish, the Batu Bara, the leader of the Batu Bara, came to Mahdi and he said, if you want to fight, I will mobilize all my men. So this is what they say, seperti orang mengantuk di sorongkan bantal. Okay. So of course he took it up lah. And okay, so after that, Raja Mahdi, captured Klang, and then he now controls Kuala Lumpur and Klang with the Datuk Bandar Muhammad Akib, is it? And then his brother anyway took over, Datuk Nonggok took over. Then after that, Raja Abdullah's sons come, they team up with Tunku Kudin's forces. Then, so it's like a siege on the fort. You starve them out and then, they walk away. So basically, you don't harm those people who have already surrendered. This is conventional warfare. So then, Tunku Kudin then takes over the fort. So this is still conventional warfare. Even though they have kota berjalan, something kota berjalan, they put the kota on the ship, they have chain blockades and all that, but it's still conventional warfare. Then in 1870, something happens. There was a country massacre, and then there were sort of very, destructive raids on Pahang by Raja Mahdi. Raja Mahdi went and joined forces with the Pahang people because these are the sons of Tun Mutahir who lost the war in Pahang. But the sons of Tun Butahir had helped him earlier on. So now he has to help them. And that's how this whole embroilment with Pahang started. So from 1870 to 1872, Tunku Kudin controls Klang, but not Kuala Lumpur. And there's a consequence for this, which you will find out. Okay. Then in mid-1871, there's something called the Rinaldo Incident, which is an example of British gunboat diplomacy. So in 1871 and 72, early 72, it's like there's a lot of skirmishes between Salma and Chong Chong, who is an enemy of Yap Aloy, and they have the Kanching men. And then you have Yap Aloy and the Ho Cho and the Hai San. So one is allied to Gihin, one is allied to Hai San. And you will hear all these kind of, blow by blow account of these wars. But from 1872 to June to March 73, you have a clear alignment. One is on the side of Tunku Kudin and Yap Aloy, and the other side is the Selangor Patriots. So we'll come to that. And then the Pahang troops enter the war a bit later, and they tip the balance in favor of Tunku Kudin. So Tunku Kudin, by 1873, he controls Klang. Yap Aloy is holding Kuala Lumpur for Tunku Kudin. And then you have the mopping up operations, where the Sumatran allies have been eliminated, or they have fled to Perak, or they have gone to Ulu Langat. And by the end of 1873, the Klang Wars is over. So a lot of this is going to be about the integration of external actors. Then only you can understand the framework. Okay, so this is actually following what is happening. It's like Professor Khoo Kim's, the Western Malay state. Actually, that's his main thesis. First, you have a commercial precondition, which is that they have already proven how much money, the control of Klang can make. So Raja Abdullah leads Klang River tax collection to a syndicate led by Reed and Tan Kim Cheng, they're also in Perak, so they have interests everywhere. Then this produces a lot of wealth. From 30,000, the revenue within 9 months jumps to 75,000 per annum. And then the tin exports nearly double. So this becomes this concentration of wealth, and of course it makes Raja Mahdi really mad, because it's like, hey, this should be mine. And then it sparked the military clashes, because as Peter Benson Maxwell says, a Malay custom, a prince is exempt from toll, but he is no longer exempt from toll, because the toll points have been taken over by a Singaporean syndicate. Then in 1871, a British trading junk was attacked by pirates near Kuala Selangor. Now these are Chinese pirates, okay? And they kill everybody on board, then they sail up Kuala Selangor. So the British dispatched the warship HMS Rinaldo, which bombarded the local forts and accused, the locals of protecting the pirates. They burned the town under the administrative assumption that the raiders were local Selangor subjects under Raja Mahdi. So they started to conflate things that, these Raja Mahdi's people, they're all pirates and freebooters. And so what happened after Rinaldo is that the day after maybe a few days or something after they bombarded the town, so Strait Settlements Colonial Secretary J.W.W. Birch, he's not only in Perak, he also, he was in Selangor, he was the Colonial Secretary. So he arrives in Kuala Langat, and he compels Sultan Abdul Samad to formally recognize Tunku Kudin, the British Tunku Kudin, as the Wakil Yang Tuan. So Tunku Kudin, he is the son-in-law of Sultan Abdul Samad. He is from Kedah. He's a Kedah prince. He's very westernized. So of course he has the ears of the colonial government, of the Strait Settlement merchants. He can talk the same language with them. And so basically, Birch, he's so heavy-handed, so he just put it to Sultan Abdul Samad. He said, well, you have to make Tunku Kudin your wakil. And so the Sultan says, and then there's a gunboat behind Birch, right? So they call the teaser, I think. And then so Sultan Abdul Samad said, okay, we will make him the head of a council. Then Birch says, no, that's not good enough. Then, in that case, I will appoint him together with my 2 sons. No, that's not good enough. So they ended up that Sultan Abdul Samad was forced to agree to make Tunku Kudin wakil mutlak. Okay, absolute. That means he's absolute representative. He has now made Sultan Abdul Samad and all his Raja, all his princes, redundant. They have no more power. All the power is under Tunku Kudin. This is what the British want. Okay, so from that day onwards, that means you're talking about middle of 1871. So very soon after this, Sultan Abdul Samad is secretly providing support to Raja Mahdi. He's secretly endorsing Raja Mahdi as the head of the other faction, right? The faction, the anti-Tunku Kudin faction. So all his own sons hate Tunku Kudin because Tunku Kudin is overstepping his place everywhere. He goes everywhere around Langat, and he acts, like so arrogant, and then he's going to Klang, and then he's going to Raja Musa fort in Kuala Selangor and take over the fort. So once Sultan Abdul Samad has said, okay, now I realize what you have told me is, you were right all along. You have been telling me this Tunku Kudin, is really, when he wants something, he'll be very sweet. And then after that, he will, assert his power. And now I believe you. Okay, so Sultan Abdul Samad tells all his sons, okay, so now you get all the Selangor people together. And basically, he's given his permission that they can form a resistance. So it's called resistance, okay? So, this is Tunku Kudin's fort. And J.W. Birch is there with Raja Ismail with the big Tunku. And Syed Zain is Tunku Kudin's right-hand man. Syed Zain, by the way, is the brother of Habib Noh of Singapore. One is a very holy man, and the other one is creative accounting. Okay. And this whole insight into creative accounting was given by Ibrahim Munshi himself. So you have to read that Ibrahim Munshi's travels, and he was the interpreter for Irving, who is the colonial auditor. And then when they were talking, he looked into the accounts and he said, this is not the price because Tunku Kudin is repaying the debts to Baba Teki. Okay, so Raja Mahdi also has borrowed money from Baba Tek Ching, and then Tunku Kudin has borrowed from Baba Teki, but then Teki go and set his own price. And this is revealed by Ibrahim Munshi. Okay, then you have Yap Aloy at Tunku Kudin's fort. He's sitting down in the chair and he's obviously the central figure. Raja Ismail is more like a figurehead, and he has to stand on one side. Okay. So it really becomes like an international affair because they even use the newspapers. So before Irving, you see, every time 1870, there was one time when I'll come to that later, where Sultan Abdul Samad had to endorse Tunku Kudin because Tunku Kudin demanded it. Okay, so Sultan Abdul Samad says no. But then sometimes because he needs something done, so he will endorse Tunku Kudin. Then 71 again. Then now April 1872. Before that happened, on the 20th of April, there was an editorial in North China Herald, which says, the British should really annex Selangor. Only Tunku Kudin can deal with these people, these pirates and freebooters. And they always say the disturbances. They always call this the disturbances. So which could mean anything. Of course, it's a euphemism. And then the next day, after Irving came down to see Tunku Kudin, and he told Tunku Kudin, tell me what you want me to say. Whatever you want to say, I can say to him, the Sultan Abdul Samad. So the colonial Auditor General has become a mouthpiece of Tunku Kudin. So Tunku Kudin is such a legit, politician. He can get his way with, the people in the colonial government, because the colonial government also doesn't really know what's going on, and they're relying on Tunku Kudin. So the North China Herald says, okay, remember the taser, Tunku Kudin has been appointed Wakil Mutlaq, and then, you simply punish the chiefs by destroying the forts and burning town, and then after that, you give it back to them to rebuild the operations. It's anything but sound policy. But for the meanwhile, the best thing you can do is to totally back this Tunku Kudin, because he's doing the right thing. So this is the newspaper, the North China Herald, is saying this. And also they have the press, maybe somebody wrote it for the press. Maybe it's a kind of editorial advertisement or something. So this, after that, okay, after you saw those troops in Tunku Kudin's fort, they have sent them to Kuala Lumpur in April 1872. And in June, Tunku Kudin wants to take it further, because he hasn't started the war. He's just sent the troops there on the ready. And he told the troops, when I give the order, then you start bombarding the town, Kuala Lumpur. And before that, he went to Singapore to basically lobby the governor. This is Governor Ord. So they explained to him, what's happening in Kuala Lumpur. We are just trying to get rid of the pirates. And then Governor Ord says, well, after the Ronaldo accident, my hands are tied, because the Admiralty or the Admiral said that we shouldn't do anything without referring to them. Then Tunku Kudin said, how about if you give permission for Bendahara Ahmad to send his men? So Governor Ord basically agreed. Okay. And to fund this military expansion, to hire the mercenaries, Tunku Kudin is borrowing more and more money. And this time he's borrowing from Davidson, your first resident. Okay, so now we come to what is happening up there in Kuala Lumpur. So I call them the Highlanders. If you have seen those movies about the Scottish Clan Wars, you see how they run. They run up and down the hill, through the highlands, through the forest, everything. I mean, it's just amazing how much stamina these Highlanders have. So the earliest map showing Kuala Lumpur actually dates to 1872. And Gombak River is just marked as River Lumpur. Tunku Kudin posted a garrison at Fort Kuala Lumpur. And this map was apparently provided by Said Zain, the brother of Habib Noor, and it was enclosed in C.J. Irving's memo for the purpose of showing the boundary between Perak and Selangor. But Tunku Kudin's closer administration only had a fuzzy knowledge of the interior. So at the time, Kuala Lumpur, not many people had been there. It's a very ulu place. Okay, and they show Kajang Wiko, but it's it's not accurate. So just to explain what is happening in Ulu Klang. Ulu Klang is what the Hikayat Pahang calls the Bandar Besar, and that is under Raja Asal. That means he has hundreds, if not thousands of people, I mean maybe 1,000-2,000, working in the mines in Ulu Klang. Then they ship it down to Kuala Lumpur. And then from Kuala Lumpur, it gets shipped down to Port Klang. So there is a couple of stages of this customs tax collection. So Kuala Lumpur is really the hub. It's also the hub for, many of the rivers flowing down from Ampang and, other places. I'll show you. So from Gombak. And this is where, at the start of the war, the Bugis had a fort. They took over the fort on Bukit Resam for tax collection. So there's an overlap between the Bugis and Sumatrans. But really north of Kuala Lumpur or outside of Kuala Lumpur is all Sumatrans. And Orang Selangor, yes. So, And then in Ulu Klang, so Raja Asal, who's a Nasution, he was previously in Pahang, where he was to some extent embroiled in the Pahang War because he's related to Tun Mutahir, who lost the Pahang War. So he actually removed himself and he said, no, enough of this war. He came in 1855. I'm just going to focus on Tun mining because we have to feed the people. By that time, they have women, they have children. So they cannot afford to be fighting wars anymore. They have to just look after the people's livelihood. And then Sultan Puasa was in Kuala Lumpur, but he is subordinate to Tuanku Raja Asal. Okay? And so he traded from KL to Malacca, and he invited Husu, Aziz Ledek, and Lukut. So the one who is going between is Raja Billah. So Raja Billah is like a deputy to the two of them. So he will go back and forth between Raja Asal and Sultan Puasa. Sorry. So you see this, okay, I just want to point. This is, what is this? This is the Klang Gates. This is your dike, which is, I think, a kind of like a natural wonder. And this is Ulu Klang. This is Ampang. This is Kuala Lumpur. Petaling. Petaling is important because this is where the Dato' Ungku Klang was. And the Dato' Ungku Klang, they are actually the Waris Negeri. So everybody has to pay some tax to them, and they can come into any shop and just take anything they want because it is their land. I mean, in a very general sense. And then you have Damansara, and then you come down to Klang. Okay. So, okay, the Highland Route is actually, next, okay, here. Next. Okay, the Highland Route is from where? From Tanjung Malim, Ulu Bernam, to Ulu Selangor, to Batang Yam, to Bandar Kancing, to Rawang, Bandar Rawang, to Kuala Lumpur. And then on the other side is Ulu Langat, to Kajang, or Rico. And then it goes, Kajang Rico, and it goes all the way to Rasa, Seremban, in Sungai Ujong. So from Perak, if you want to go by the Highland Route to Negeri Sembilan, this is the way that the people who are the Highlanders, they prefer to use this road because the coastal area could be controlled. It could be pirates. It could be, the Bugis tax collectors. And so you have the mines in Ampang. And then you have also from Ulu Klang, you can cross over to, is it Bentong, I think, in Pahang. Yeah. And then from Kuala Lumpur down to Klang, there are kind of like some obstructions here. So most people go on foot. Okay, you can't really take a bigger boat on foot. So now I have to explain what happened with, the Pahang, it gets very complicated because there are 3 wars, which it started with 3 different wars and it all conflated into one. So after the Pahang War, which ended in 1963, the sons of Tun Mutahir had a lot of these rebels. They were called Rawa. I think most of them were Rawa. So they, from 1870 to 71, Raja Mahdi works with the sons of Tun Mutahir. Not Mahathir, sorry. It's not Mahathir. Yeah. It's Mutahir. Huh? Okay, please not Mutahir. Sorry, this was... but this was a last minute addition. So they were organizing raids. And then it became very bad in 1870. So because of this, the Sultan, Tunku Kudin said, just give me the wakil mutlak, wakil, okay, make me the wakil yang tuan, and then I will settle all these disturbances. So that was the first time in 1870 the Sultan confirmed Tunku Kudin's authority as his viceroy and appointed leader of all strangers of every race, like the Datuk Dagang. And the next week, Tunku Kudin issues the order naming 16 rebel leaders operating along the border, especially Ulu Selangor, because Ulu Selangor is 15 hours to route, and that's where the trouble is. So exterminate the Mandalings, but when you read the names, there are hardly any Mandalings. They're actually Rawas. Because when they were in Pahang, the Rawa people were known as Mandalings. Because the Mandalings were the leaders. So the Pahang Rawas, there were two groups of them. So you have Rawas on this side and Rawas on the other side. It is very confusing. They were mercenaries. So there's also, what I want to say, Raja Perhimpunan Tunku Raja Layang. There's a Datuk Setia Raja, but we don't know whether it's the same one. He is Mandaling, but we don't know, because Datuk Setia Raja is just a title. So he could be the same one as the one who eventually went to Perak, Batu Gajah, but we don't know. Okay, so basically it's called Exterminate the Mandalings. Okay, then you have another war which is going on between the secret societies. Okay, so what happened here was, there was one day, Yap Aloy said, oh, you know the Kancing people owe us something ingots, let's go and collect. So Sultan Prasa, Raja Asal, they went with their, maybe 100 men, 200 men. So they had more men than Yap Aloy. So they went up to Kancing. And then there was a massacre which 100 of the Kancing miners ended up dead. Okay? So we believe that somebody lempar batu sembunyi tangan. Because somebody shot first and then everybody started shooting, right? And then later on, of course, Raja Asal's family says that it was a setup by Yap Aloy. They were tricked into it. And there are two things to support that. One is that Yap Aloy asked Sultan Abdul Samad for forgiveness. Okay, so there is a record in the Chinese records. And the other is that in the end, the Kancing refugees followed Raja Asal. So why would the Kancing people follow Raja Asal if Raja Asal is an enemy and he hates the Chinese? That the Kancing people followed him, and they are now in Patan. They're sharing two sides of the hill. The cemetery, the Mandalings on one side, the Chinese on the other end. And the French explorers went and they found them mining side by side. And then before April 1872, Raja Asal changed sides. I think you have heard about this. Raja Asal changed sides. This is from Middle Book. Of course, Middle Book doesn't understand he was mainly looking at the Chinese secret societies. He doesn't understand the dynamics of, what these people were doing. And so I will come to why did Raja Asal change sides, or who changed sides? And then Raja Asal joined with Selangor patriots and the Kancing people before the Battle of Kuala Lumpur, or the Battle for Kuala Lumpur. So what was Yap Aloy's motive? First, he blamed the Kancing people for the murder of Aziz Keledek. Or it could have been Chong Chong. Chong Chong was Yap Aloy's boss in Lukut, and then became a business partner, and then he went over to the side of the Kancing people. And he teamed up with Syed Mashor. So Chong Chong and Syed Mashor were like blood brothers. I mean, they were like brothers, okay? So the Kancing miners were exporting the tin. Okay, so instead of Kuala Lumpur, now they export the tin down Kuala Selangor, the other river. And they were also supporting the Rawa rebels, partly because of Raja Mahdi, partly they were just probably pressured to do it, or exhausted or whatever. And so when the issue came out, exterminate the Mandalings, it also said, and anyone who lends them support, and by that they meant the Kancing miners. So once this massacre happened, and Yap Aloy was also in Klang. He was going to see Tunku Kudin all the time. So Tunku Kudin decided, okay, this is a very suitable partner. He's so ruthless, and we are on the same side. Okay, so this is the ecology, the system, the river systems. You have Ulu Burnam. So the Rajas of Burnam is like, I think also nephews of Sultan Abdul Samad, is Raja Hitam, I think, and Raja Indut. Raja Indut actually joins the Selangor Patriots, okay? And you have Ulu Selangor. So Kancing is between Kuala Lumpur and Ulu Selangor. So when they find that they don't want to take the tin down Klang River, they will take it down Selangor River. And then Raja Musa is actually getting the taxes. So those taxes are actually going to the resistance, to the Selangor resistance. And Ulu Langat is the only place which is undisturbed. because Sultan Abdul Samad is there, and he says, you can go and fight, but don't come to Langat, So Ulu Langat, there was peace throughout. And then they can go to Lukut, they can go to Pahang, they can go to Sungai Ujong, So there's so many routes to Pahang. And this is how, and they would be, it's quite level. I mean, of course, Rawang Road and all that. It is more or less level. I mean, it's not. So people are running, back and forth between these posts. Okay, so now finally we come to the battle for Kuala Lumpur, or the battle of Kuala Lumpur, or the battle for Kuala Lumpur. It starts in June 1872 and it ends in March 1873. So of course, this is the terrain. There are some of the names which we found and we just put it there. So you have, this is a kubu, but we think, okay, it's a theory, it's not proven, but we think that what the Roman Catholic Church took over looks like a fort, and that is probably where the kubu was. And the whole thing is Kota Bukit Nanas, but the kubu is here. And then Bukit Resam is also called Bukit Pokok Terap, it's also called Bukit Mahkamah, because there used to be a courthouse there. And then this, the bluff is called Bukit Sri Indra Susunan, the bluff, or now it's Bukit Aman. Okay, so, and Hujung Pasir is something here. Again, I haven't properly mapped it out. I hope the Kuala Lumpur people will do. But the final battle is in Hujung Pasir. Okay, so I think it's somewhere near Sungai Bunus, Kampung Baru. Okay, so one of the records is actually from Tuan Abu Bakar, Anak Raja Pinayongan. And this, how wealthy they were. So this Abu Bakar's father, Raja Pinayongan, he was trading in tin and investing in Chinese coolies. He transported tens of thousands of bahara of tin to a Straits Chinese buyer in Malacca over the course of his career. He had a personal fortune of $6,000. And he died that means, okay, you're collecting, during Raja Mahdi's time, maybe 35,000 or 30,000 or 35,000 a year. So he had a personal fortune of 6,000. He died just before the Battle of Kuala Lumpur. He was buried in a corner of Kubu Bukit Nanas. And he was given a Raja's funeral with the gun salute, with the hearse carried by so many men, and Mariam salute. And this is where he was buried. But it just says, I don't know, it's a bit difficult to find. And at that time, they had the Gondang Sembilan. So he drew this. We had the Gondang Sembilan. So when the father died, they beat the Gondang, and there was this whole, ceremony. It's a few pages long. And okay, so actually this is where I got Sungai Resam before. So it is actually on the other side. Maybe I got that wrong. It's on this side of Bukit Mahkamah. And okay, on next. Okay, so it started with the occupation of Kuala Lumpur. Occupation. Okay, so the sources are mainly from one Muhammad Amin, Pesaka Selangor, Abdullah Hukum, and Abu Bakar is an unpublished manuscript. So one Muhammad Amin actually talks more about the Battle of Klang, not so much about Kuala Lumpur. Whereas the other two, the two accounts correlate. So the value is occupation. So you have the Mandalings, the Rawas, the Orang Tembusai, and then you had the military army that come from the coast. So it's Van Hagen, the Dutchman, Cavalieri in Italian, 15 to 20 European and Eurasian non-commissioned officers, 80 sepoys, Indians, Orang Habshi, native fighters, including Raja Layang. Yeah, I think he's a Minang. Yeah, and then what happened is that somebody stole a chicken. So this is in the words. Okay, in the year of Hijrah, 1289, the war in Kuala Lumpur broke out. The leader on the side of Tunku Kudin was the Datuk Dagang Nonggok. The Chinese also entered the fray on the side of Tunku Darudin. Their chief was called Kapitan Yap Aloy. On the side of Said Mashor, the Chinese from Hakka group, is a Kayin Chu of the Kanchi, but both sides are Hakka. They also got mixed up in it, and their chief was called Ah Chong or Chong Chong. He was a Chinese renowned for his valiant gallantry. And this is from Tunku Kudin's side, So when Muhammad Amin, actually at first he was on Raja Mahdi's side, but because he's from Kedah background, his father is from Kedah, so he changed to Tunku Kudin's side and got a more stable salary. Yeah, Yeah, I mean, they are better pay master because they can keep borrowing. Whereas for the Raja Mahdi side, it's like, okay, I'll pay you when I get some money, then I'll pay you. So of course, a lot of people went to Tunku Kudin side. Then from Abu Bakar, when Governor Anson was ruling and administering the street settlements, Tiga Negeri, he and soldiers with the decree of the Sultan of Selangor, the army boats travel upriver to Kuala Lumpur, full of important people orang besarnya, who were buying arms and weapons of war like cannons, fire pots, and guns. The soldiers came in thousands as a warning to the young Malays. Okay, the young Malays, they mean, this is written in 1930. So it's just, at that time, the census already lumped everyone as Malays, but they're basically mostly Sumatrans. That is at Kuala Lumpur. And not long after that, they arrived in Kuala Lumpur and stopped at the town shop of Kapitan China Yap Loy. That is the first person they went to see, these foreign missionaries. The first person they went to see is Yap Aloy. So we know that by that time, Yap Aloy was already, together with Tunku Kudin. Okay, then when Abdullah Hukum says, one day when I was living in Kuala Lumpur, so these are eyewitness accounts, I saw two white men with about 50 sepoys, black people with frizzy hair. They're probably Habshis. Well, he says they're Calcutta men, but they arrived in Kuala Lumpur and they approached and entered the fort into which we had fitted up. That means, Abdullah Hukum, he was like basically a menial manual laborer. And he was maybe working for someone to outfit the fort, repair the fort on Bukit Rasam at the top of Court Hill, now the police court in 1935. They entered just like that, like birds returning to their nest. I was surprised and I thought to myself, perhaps there was a traitor. Someone said the Chinese had committed treachery, Belot. So you know who lah, okay? Yeah. These are the, did I miss? Okay. Then Abdullah Hukum. Okay, one day, two European soldiers, Sipahi Orang Putih, had arrived a week earlier, came down from the hill fort. While walking, they unexpectedly took by force the shopkeeper's chicken, which was cooked up beneath the wooden platform, the pumpkin, and ran away with it. So basically, they did whatever they liked. The Kuala Lumpur was under occupation. Of course, the Malays gave chase with krisses and short swords, but they escaped those Sipahi escaped by running into the fort. That was the start of the quarrel in Kuala Lumpur, and the fort was attacked by the Malays. But in the fighting, fire pots, periuk api, were released from the fort, setting fire to the houses. So we don't know how much of how many houses, but obviously, there was some destruction. So now we're talking about the resistance. Who was the resistance? Thus, Abu Bakar, there was the Nanas fort, Kubu Nanas. That was the oldest fortified settlement, Kota. That means it was being used before. It was already ruined on one side, and the ramparts had been broken down. So the Malays, the Mandalings and the allies, Mandaling Rawat Tambusaya, worked to fix it and not relocate. And not long after that, the fort was ready, complete with houses. So whoever wanted to relocate, the shopkeepers and villagers could all move into the fort. They were shifting their things and not yet finished moving when the soldiers descended from the hill to frolic in numbers around the town. So that's why we say that Sultan Puasa, he sheltered his people. He had the fort built, and everyone who wants to go away, who wants to flee, leave Kuala Lumpur, they can. Those who want to stay in Kuala Lumpur, they could stay in this fort. So we heard the news, people were fleeing the town. This is Abu Bakar, saying that the quarrel that happened earlier was between the white soldiers and Si Kitang, because Si Kitang's fowl was caught by the white soldier. It became a fight, pulling and boxing, and this was witnessed by Sultan Puasa, Raja Osman of Sungai Batu, and Jah Baramain of Sungai Batu, and Haji Dorain, and Haji Abdullah Fani, the Qadi and the Imam. Actually, there were many Hajis in Kuala Lumpur. So you imagine how much wealth they had. So that's why we say that, Sultan Puasa, he built up he developed Kuala Lumpur. And there were so many Hajis among the Malay community because they had made the money as tin miners. And they were investors in Chinese mines as well. So, and Haji Abdullah Fani, the Qadi, an Imam of Tambuse Rawa people, to the Tambuse Rawa people, the Tambuse Ramba people had their own Imam and Qadi, and many others. Okay, and then came the military captain from the hill, bringing his men, and they arrested Sultan Puasa and Raja Osman and Jabbar Ma'in and Haji Darhin and others. And the military commander did not ask about or investigate the reasons for the quarrel. You know, they just were subjugating the natives. I mean, the people of Kuala Lumpur. They just did as they liked. And they took those people to the hill, they entered the fort and detained them for an hour. Because we Malays went in numbers to ask them not to quarrel because of a chicken, and a cheap one at that. So for the time being, there was peace between the Malays and the white men. So, after this, when Tunku Kudin had gone to Governor Ott gave permission, so Tunku Kudin sent a message. You can start. Okay? So this is called the Battle of the Two Forts in Kuala Lumpur, between Bukit Nanas and Bukit Rasam. So the Battle of Kuala Lumpur starts in June, about June 1871. So you have Sultan Puasa's stockade on Bukit Nanas and Tunku Kudin's garrison on Bukit Rasam. So on one side are these Mendaling, Rawa, Tembuse, and then what kind of cannons did they have? They had cannons, the longest is 2 bepa, 2 arms length. Then they had 10 cannons, they had muzzle loading guns, that means they load from the front. So it takes a long time. It's called Setinggai, Blunderbuss, swords, spears, and krises. And then the music was gong, gong, dong, 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 right? And then Team B, the mercenary army, they had 200 people. They had cannons, they had breech loading guns, they had fire pots. And their music is drum, and then they had trumpet, and then they had flute, okay? So this is obviously like a Western army, right? It's led by the white men. So they were fighting. So Abu Bakr says, so whenever the gun of the Malays went off once, the guns of the sepoys went off 10 times. It's an asymmetrical warfare. Okay, and for a while, nothing could be heard except the firing of cannons and guns. And the noises were similar to the sounds of the old wars, and complete with the sound of the great gong, dong, dong. Whereas on the enemy side was heard the drum and the trumpet and the flute. So are these Kuala Lumpur people who play trumpet, I mean, in 1872, right? It's a foreign mercenary army. So what happened was, they're fighting like a guerrilla warfare. So they thought of an idea. Oh, what if we go up the tree, we put a cannon on the tree? So they brought 2 copper hand cannons, raised them, and a pair of Malay drums, and a gong, the tawak. And on that day, many of the men on the enemy side were killed and wounded because the firing came from above. And no one would think that the Malays would know how to wage war from the trees. Okay, so you see, where is it? Where's the picture? What happened to the picture? Oh yeah, there. Okay, so this is drawn by Abu Bakr. So they actually went up this pokok ara, okay, and then they said where they were, and then they were, these were bloody, something called bloody or something like that. And then they showed, they shoot down. So they did this for 10 days, and the people ran out of the fort. They cannot tahan, so they all went out of the Bukit Rasam. And that's how they got them out of their fort. Because when they were in the fort, they were, unassailable. Okay, and then, the next one. Okay. So Abu Bakr said, okay, so because now the soldiers were everywhere, Yaqbalai's people were now fully engaged. So they said, in such a situation, they were rallying the allies. The Malays started together. Some came from Hulu Klang, that's Raja Asal's people, from Ampang. And then, like a movie, you can imagine, from Hulu Langat, from Kajang, from every nook and corner, all and sundry made their way to Kuala Lumpur. only did I see the behavior of the Malays. That is like a tiger let loose from a cage. So, okay, so the next one. Okay, that's should be before rallying the allies. And there's really a lot about this, but I won't go into it. But the most important people were the Selangor patriots. They were the people who fought for Selangor. They were related to Sultan Abdul Samad. So Raja Mahmud and his father, Tunku Panglima Raja Berkat Riau. Raja Laut bin Sultan Muhammad, who was Sultan Muhammad's son, and Said Mashur bin Said Muhammad Ashahab. And the reason why we have these photos, because they stayed on even after the colonial administration, because they were like untouchable. They were the Sultan's men. Okay, and so there were pictures of them. Raja Laut became the penghulu of Kuala Lumpur with a salary of $4,800, and he was very lonely because he was the only Malay chief left from before the Klang War. He had basically got rid of all the chiefs. Just like Perak War, after the Birch murder, they got rid of all the native chiefs, except for, a few people who were retained, co-opted. Okay. So, okay, part 2, the Battle of Kuala Lumpur. So, in July, August, they really, all these people had gathered in Kuala Lumpur. So you had, of course, Sultan Puasa's little brigade. He's not so much a fighter, he's more of a trader. Raja Asal, overlord of the Malays, who could summon, hundreds of men. And his allies, Sultan Bangka Hulu, leader of the Wawas from Tanjung Malung. And they were people who had been in the Pahang War. So they knew each other from Pahang. Raja Amin, son of Tunku Sultan, leader of the Wawas, 100 men. Imam Perang Puryok and his Orang Kampar from Cheras. Leaders of Orang Selangor, Raja Mahmud, Tunku Panglima, Raja Berkat Riau, Raja Laut, and Raja Indut. Raja Indut is from Bernam. He's the brother of the chief of Bernam, Raja Itam. And we had Said Mashur, Chongchong, and the Kanching Liners. So these are the Gihin people. And then on the other side, you had the mercenary army, the same, and then you had Yap Aloy. Okay. So that time, they won that round. So there's a lot of action which you can read about. And when Tunku Kudin lost, again, he turned to the colonial friends, One of them is Reed. Remember, Reed was part of the tax collection syndicate in Klang. He lost, so now he's doing everything he can to get it back. So he writes letters all over the place, And one of the letters, the only course open would appear to be to strengthen Tunku Diadun's hands in every possible way and openly proclaim the government's support of him as the legitimate ruler of the territory. The presence of a high official on board a man of war would have a good effect upon the native mind. So basically, they were all for gunboat diplomacy, but the problem is you cannot send a gunboat up the Klang River to Kuala Lumpur. The gunboat won't get there because there are snakes along the way and all that, and the river is too small. So that was the main problem that they faced. Why Tunku Kudin cannot take over Kuala Lumpur. And we saw that, from the highland routes, they can run east, west, they can run everywhere. They can just avoid anybody who comes up the river. Okay. Sorry. What was that before? Okay. So, okay. So, you have Team A, Team B. Okay. So, what happened? Still the same thing. July, August. But I've shown this, is it? But basically, so in the middle book, you will see this. There's actually four of these slides, four of these pictures, and they're showing that actually Said Mashur and Chongchong, they were running between Kuala Kubu and Kuala Lumpur. They were fighting that way. Sometimes they're on the defensive, sometimes they're on the offensive. And so here, and then they're going up Kuala Selangor, and then they're running this way. So these are all connected, okay? Oh, this is the same, wait. Okay, so the fall of Kuala Lumpur. Basically, the first round was Yap Aloy and Van Hagen were defeated. Then Tengku Kudin, okay, so Tengku Kudin in August, there were already rumors. There have been rumors flying about within the last day or two to the effect that Tengku Kudin has been obliged to fly away from Selangor and take refuge in Malacca, having been utterly defeated by Raja Ahmadi and his followers. Van Hagen was killed, executed. Yap Aloy, ran down Damansara with only his underwear. Yeah, I mean, basically they lost badly, okay? So they come to Tengku Kudin, and Tengku Kudin, what can I do? Because the gunboat cannot go up the Klang River. The only solution are people who know jungle warfare and who are enemies of these people, the Highlanders. And these are the Pahang men. Okay, so remember the Pahang War, which ended in 1863, is spilling over now into Selangor. So in Hikayat Pahang, Tengku Kudin says to Bendahara Ahmad, if my father, if your highness does not assist us, we will certainly be unable to withstand any longer, as Raja Asal is formidable in strength. Orang tersangat kuat. All the Selangor Mendaling and Selangor men are in unity. All the Mendaling and the Selangor men are in unity. That means Raja Asal and the Selangor people, actually they have received instruction from Sultan Abdul Samad and his sons, you must support the resistance. Okay, so that's why they're all in unity behind Raja Mahdi. Raja Mahdi is more like the politician, right? But they all support him. And Abu Bakr says, in early March 1873, the Pahang army arrived at Ulu Klang, led by Imam Perang Rasul, also known as Tok Gajah. This is like the end, because the Pahang men, they came in thousands. I think 3,000? They said 5 to 10,000. And they are used to jungle warfare. They just came across from Rob to Ulu Selangor. They came from Bentong. They spilled into Kuala Lumpur. They were all over the place. And Raja Asal had his kubu. He had built like a fan, like his kubus here, just shaped like a fan. So the Pahang people just knocked them down one by one. But that's another story. Okay. So the next one. Okay. So now you have the Pahang men have come into the picture. The site is more or less the same. But this one, you have now the Pahang men, the first quarter of 1873. Okay. So this is the eyewitness accounts. Abu Bakr says, they took the people of Kuala Lumpur by surprise, or in their minds. So for the Kuala Lumpur people, Van Hagen is dead, Yap Aloy has run away, so it's already over. So what else, They went back to their daily lives, the farming and all that. And then when they heard that the Pahang men were there, they started to tremble, they were so afraid because they've heard about the Pahang men. And this, and there's a lot of it in Hikayat Pahang. Then they were making bullets in the Kubu Nanas, and Bukit Nanas. And then somebody said, hey, young lad, don't you know yet? Panglima Rasul cannot be killed by bullets, by 10 bullets. We've tried many times during the first war of Mahdi in Klang. So he's invincible, immovable. And all the cannons were turned towards Bukit Timbalan, that's Belt Hill. And everyone was vigilant on the road and the junctions. Everybody just, where are they coming today or tonight? And then it was announced, tomorrow morning we will go to the middle of the field. Okay, this is really the last battle. Tomorrow, they have been fighting all over Kuala Lumpur, and basically they have retreated to Bukit Nanas, but they cannot stay there longer because they are running out of food. So tomorrow morning we will go to the middle of the field. And the field, it was an open field which was slightly wider at Sungai Bunus. And at that time, it was a place of Malays. Anak-anak Melayu named Kampung Baru Melayu. This is 1935 lah. And there was much blood shed in this battle. Okay. Okay. And then, so this is the account of Abdullah Hugub. So they all, they actually match. Abdullah Hugub says, and so one day, as soon as the sun was inclined towards the west, all of a sudden, everyone was shocked to hear a young woman, about 20 years old, Cik Putih, as beautiful and fair as her name implied, the wife of Raja Asal, the leader of the Jawas, actually the foreigners, foreign Malay, something they call foreign Malays, called out before everyone with a sweet voice, "Hey, you warriors, what do you all think? We look as if we've almost lost, not much food left, and many of our men are dead. If we go on like this, surely it will be as hopeless as incubating a stone." I don't know what's the expression in Malay. Therefore, allow me to step out. What? Meneram telur or something. Meneram batu telur. Batu. Meneram batu can never give birth. They never live. Therefore, allow me to step out to take part in the fighting. I'm ready to sacrifice my life. For after all, I'm going to meet my end anyway. So this is Cik Putih. Cik Putih is actually, she is from the Pahang royalty. She's a niece, I think, of one Mutahir. Not Mahathir, Mutahir. And it was a kind of marriage of alliance. So she was actually married to Raja Asal. Raja Asal is very old. He's like maybe 60, 70. But he has a beautiful young wife who is from the Pahang royalty. And that's why Raja Asal had to fight for one Mutahir. Because, they make alliances through marriage. And we have someone has just found Cik Putih's grave. No? Not you. Okay, but someone has found her grave. I'm not sure. Oh, not verified, okay. When they heard those words, the warriors exclaimed loudly, "Lady, do not go out. As long as we have the life in us, let us die first." Okay, this is the last battle. Because they've been sitting in the fort, they know they cannot go out, and they are starving, okay? So, Abdullah Hukuma, then arose a noisy discussion among them, which resounded throughout the fort. But at 3 o'clock that afternoon, Cik Putih suddenly appeared, looking as if she was ready to become the war commander. She wore Artemis trousers of red and black stripes, silk shirt with short sleeves. Sorry, her appearance was as magnificent as gold studded with diamonds. More so because of her weapons, a sword, a kris, as well as a rifle. She was so stunning that her voice quivered with inspiration. She said, "Hey, all of you warriors, let us surrender to God and follow me." So she stepped out of the fort, accompanied by all the warriors, boisterously shouting and yelling towards the place of the Pahang men and Raja Layang's men, and that is at the first edge of Bukit Timbalan, now called Rock Hill. So, okay, so now we have a report from the newspaper, okay? Straits Times Overland Journal, 10th of April. So the last day of battle was, I think, 23rd of March. Last evening at 8 o'clock, news came from Kuala Lumpur that the Pahang people were in full possession of the place. And the following are the best particulars obtainable of the affair. The Pahangs have succeeded in getting Bukit Nanas, thereby closing the roads to the fort. The Manalings made an attack upon them on the 21st. Fight was that day kept up from 1 p.m. until dusk. Next morning, they again commenced at 6 a.m. and kept it up till 10 p.m. when operations were closed for the day. The next morning, seeing and hearing no one in or about the fort, the Pahangs entered and found the place deserted. So the first day was Cik Putih saying, "Hey, we are going out to fight." And that night, they already assessed that they cannot win, that they're losing, they're lost. Okay, they're totally defeated. So they said, okay, tomorrow we go and fight again. But the second day is a decoy because they are evacuating the women, the children, the old people, and they are going by, I think, Pudu route. Then they went out in the darkness of night. And so after the day, the second day's fighting concluded and many people died, the brave warriors died. the people from the fort have been evacuated and they are already running to that highland, to Kanching, they're running to Kanching. So, okay. So there is a report from Malacca that Raja Asal and his men have vacated Ulu Klang, where he was fortified. And the whole of the interior of Klang was in the possession of Tunku Waldin. Yay! So that's it, That is the fall of Kuala Lumpur. Because these are the people of Kuala Lumpur, not the people who came later. Okay. So total war. Okay, so the Battle of Kuala Lumpur was the start of something I call total war. And total war means there are no rules. Okay. So why total war? Because the Ronaldo incident, the administrators told, the Ronaldo incident, they were chasing the Chinese pirates. But in the report, they said, they're all pirates because the people in the Kuala Selangor are also pirates. And therefore, it started to be conflated, and now they're all Malay pirates. Okay? So Selangor is a nest of Malay pirates. And then they started to condemn Malay pirates, and they gave the go-ahead to Tunku Kudin. So the ambitious Tunku Kudin is now given total control as Wakil Mutlak, and he is borrowing from foreign capitalists. Basically, he's mortgaging Selangor to the foreign capitalists. That Malaya leads to defeat Chong Chong and those who want to avenge the country massacre. So of course he points out, and they're going for total war, means to eliminate the enemy, exterminate. The Pahang men want revenge on the Rawa raiders. Those Rawa raiders have been causing trouble for how many years? They've burned their villages and all that. And the creditors are lobbying for intervention. So the merchants keep telling the colonial office, hey, if the British come in, that will be the end of the disturbances. We want Pax Britannica. So, erasure of Tok Ungku Klang. This is one of the symptoms of total war. On the 18th of November 1872, they captured Petaling, where the Tok Ungku Klang and the Tunku Panglima Raja, the father of Raja Mahmud, had been entrenched. Among the spoils captured was a letter addressed to Tok Ungku Klang by the Sultan himself under the Selangor State seal, instructing Tok Ungku to assist Raja Mahdi against the Viceroy. So this is proof. And then, I've lost my page here. Okay. Then, this is a study where they interviewed the Tok Ungku Klang's family. All the genealogical items of Tok Ungku Klang were destroyed by Tunku Kudin in the attack on Petaling, the headquarters of Tok Ungku. And Tok Ungku is like the head of all the native people, especially including the Orang, the Pemoans, okay? The eighth Tok Ungku Klang, called Tok Ungku Kalong, never thought that Tunku Kudin would commit such a treachery on Kianatan towards him just because Datuk Ungku Kalong did not go along, tidak mempersetujui, with the acceptance of the British government by Sultan Abdul Samad and Tunku Kudin. So that means, you see, when you have a conventional war, you don't do things like that. You go and destroy people's genealogies. You go and burn down sacred sites. Because there are rules of engagement. But this means it's a total war. You are willing to burn down your own town just so that your enemy won't get their hands. This is called scorched earth policy. And then the next one is okay. The first Kanching massacre was 100 people died. This is the second Kanching massacre. And Yap Malay, there's actually a whole cult, and the temples of this, since I can't really pronounce it, but, they have their deity of one of the Kapitan Cina who died in Sungai Ujong. And so this deity appeared to him in a dream and said to him, within the camp is a man to help you. His name is Yap Machin. He formerly had experience in war and can make rockets, which will give you victory over the Malays. Okay. So these are the Chinese invention of a fire rocket. It's arrows with the rocket, the gunpowder attached to it. And this is what was the first time used probably in Malaya. And this, why these people are so ruthless? Partly because there was another war in China. It's called the Punte War. And, it's after the Taiping Rebellion, then they have the Punte War, and it's just like they had decades of war. And they have all this technology as well. So, in Hikayat Pahang, therefore the enemy's houses were set on fire. Our people went in and attacked in an armored fashion. And in 3 hours, it was all over. More than 300 of the enemy were killed, and so Kanching town was taken. So what do you call this? Genocide. But there are other incidents. There was a mass beheading by the Klang River and all that. But this is just to give you an example. And that's what total war means. So what does Tengku Kudin do? Okay, on the 8th of March, remember before the fall of Kuala Lumpur, he already, to secure his debts, Tengku Kudin grants an extraordinarily generous 10-year mining concession to J.G. Davidson and Count Charles Moore de Salas. He's from Java. They cut the standard 10%, state royalty in half to just 5%. It should be 5%, calling into question whether a viceroy could legally sign away state assets without the Sultan's approval. So he's, making sure that he has the backing, okay? And then Davidson flips this concession to a London-based Niagara syndicate, the Selangor Tin Mining Company, headed by Seymour Clark, brother of W.H. Reed. So Reed is in the picture. They're all in it together, the street settlements merchants, but Davidson is a lawyer. So the geopolitical ultimatum, to force the British Colonial Office to protect their investments, the syndicate presents a letter from Tengku Kudin. Kudin delivers an ultimatum. If the British do not intervene to secure life and property in Selangor, I will turn to Germany. Okay, and that is actually why the British intervention into the Malay state started. It's because of the Klang War and because of Tengku Kudin's threat to call in the Germans. Okay, next. So, military victory to political capitulation in late 1873. So on the 23rd of March, Tengku Kudin's forces, heavily reinforced by Pahang fighters, captured Sultan Plaza's stronghold in Kuala Lumpur, breaking the back of the opposing faction. This Kuala Lumpur is the hub. If you don't pass through Kuala Lumpur, you can't go anywhere. The forward movement. So Sir Andrew Clark arrives as the new governor of the Strait Settlements with a fresh mandate from London, shifting British policy from passive non-intervention to active imperial interference. So with Andrew Clark, that's why you have the Pankor Treaty. So how this led to Pankor Treaty? Well, the Pankor Treaty specifically addressed the succession crisis in neighbouring Perak. The financial and geopolitical template created in Selangor directly dictated the execution. So even in Penang, the Penang merchants have been urging the colonial government to intervene because of Larut Wars. Okay, so the template, the London Tin syndicates and Singapore financiers like Reed and Davidson held massive financial stakes across both Perak and Selangor. They pressured Governor Clark that their capital was unsafe without formal British law. And the settlement at Pankor, the Pankor Treaty. In January 1874, Governor Clark summoned the Perak chiefs to Pankor Island, and using the exact same justification in Selangor, protecting British investments and preventing alternative European interference, he forced the signing of the Pankor Treaty. Then, this resident system was re-exported back to Selangor after they tried J.W.W. Birch as the resident. So it established the British resident system, which stripped the Sultan of executive power over revenue and administration. You can be in charge of religion and Malay customs, but we'll take over everything else. Having successfully tested this interventionist model at Pankor, Governor Clark immediately exported it back to Selangor later, appointing J.G. Davidson, Kudin's chief financier, as the very first British resident of Selangor. So they did a number on you. So, just to refresh, what is the difference between conventional war and total war? Conventional war is elite pooling. There are too many elites. We have to do it. Okay, send them to war. Then they go and fight among themselves, and then it will be resolved. The strongest one will win, and then your domestic equilibrium will be restored. And that you have to see it in this context that Sultan Abdul Samad said, it is a matter for the boys. They can fight it out. You know, there's a famous saying, right? But you have to see it in this context. Now, total war, it started with exterminate the Malays, extermination. So it's a zero-sum game. The winner takes all. But they will destroy the resource base. They will destroy, the paddy fields, the mines. They will burn down the town, and they will directly target civilians. They will directly target your cultural heirlooms. And this caused the systemic collapse of the whole society, and nothing can save it except for foreign intervention, right? And that's what Tunku Kudin wanted. He got foreign intervention. He was willing to be the head of a puppet government. But actually, in the end, the British also decided to do away with him in Klang. And then by the time they moved to Kuala Lumpur, they decided to do away with Malaya. So the consequences, exit orang Selangor, or they are reduced to poverty. Exit the native Malays. I mean, they were chased out of Klang. Of course, they came back after that lah. Exit the Sumatran allies. Actually, the Sumatrans, some of them found refuge in Langat because the Sultan was the one who asked them to, wage the resistance war, and most of them went to Perak. Enter the colonialists, the creditors, the contractors, the reconstruction, the military contractors become the reconstruction contractors. You've heard that, right? And the carpet beggars. Carpet beggars are the people who come to town, they want to make money. And the Pahang men. The Pahang men were offered Raja Asal's mines, they were offered a lot of mines, but they were not very good at running mines, and after a few years they went back. Okay, so this is the last slide. The strategic consequence, the colonial escape hatch. What can Tunku Kudin do? He must appeal to the colonial regime. So to escape the self-inflicted zero-sum debt trap, the exhausted victors had no choice but to surrender their sovereignty, or actually the Selangor sovereignty, and invite an external arbiter, the British Empire, to inject foreign capital and institutional force needed to construct an entirely new equilibrium. It's a colonial order. Okay? And the Selangor patriots and Sumatran chiefs were fighting a defensive conventional war to protect their people and their homes, their mines, their property, their paddy fields. Conversely, the Tunku Kudin Yap Aloy axis, backed by foreign financiers and imperial interests, imported a scorched earth total war methodology. The Tunku Kudin Yap Aloy axis did not just defeat their opponents, they systematically violated the region's traditional rules of war by destroying its settlements, displacing its indigenous guardians, and erasing the original communities of Kuala Lumpur, paving the way for a compliant colonial order. I think that's all. Finished.
I think this might be the most that I've seen with people sitting on the floor. So I'm planning to take Lucas and Salma out for dinner tonight, and I know what I'm going to talk to her about. Write a book. Okay. It's like watching a movie. Sorry? Okay, yeah. First we're going to sell the books, yeah. Okay. So before I take questions, please give us your feedback. There's a QR code for feedback. There's a QR code for donation. There's another QR code for the KL Discovery Pass. Yeah? To check out our gift shop. Now, we only have about less than half an hour for questions. So make your questions brief. Try to avoid commentaries. And yeah.
I want to ask, why do Tunku Kudin sided with the British?
I didn't give you enough about Tunku Kudin's background. He's actually a Kedahan prince. So he was the Sultan's brother, right? Yeah. And of course, like, elite overproduction. You got somebody who's capable, who's ambitious, but he got nowhere to go. He can't be the Sultan, right? His brother is the Sultan. So he marries Raja Arafat, yeah, who was Sultan Abdul Samad's daughter. In fact, Raja Arafat was promised to Raja Mahdi. And then instead, because Raja Mahdi wasn't, successfully running the Klang tax collection, so he decided to give it to he decided to marry her to Tunku Kudin. So there's a love element there, right? But so Tunku Kudin becomes Sultan Abdul Samad's brother-in-law. So when he wanted to go to war, he went back to Kedah. He borrowed money from his mother, a lot of people. Yeah, it's all in the book. And then he got, the Kedah fighting men. So this Kedah is just like Kedah today. If you are ambitious in Kedah, what do? You come to KL. No. You can't do very much in Kedah at the moment. So you come to KL and you prove yourself. And that's exactly what Tunku Kudin did. But Tunku Kudin, because he is very near Penang, so he's very westernized. He keeps dogs. He drinks alcohol. So the local Malays totally reject him. Nobody wants to follow him, right? And when he goes to Langat, then people are like, oh, we better avoid him because he is the Sultan's son-in-law, but we don't want to have anything to do with him. So he is totally disliked by all the Selangor people. Even the wife, he's estranged from the wife. Yeah.
Just now you said that Tunku Kudin actually threatened the British. Is it or not? If British don't intervene, he will go to the German. Is it anti-threaten or really has the connection with the Germans?
Okay, the Germans were actually already the most successful shipping company because they built up a shipping company that traded between the Dutch and the British. Dutch East Indies and British Malaya. And they were, already in China, they were everywhere. And this is something, of course, they won't tell you in your history books. Your history books are written by the British. So they won't tell you a lot of things. The Germans at one time, they were almost going to lease the whole of Langkawi. Yeah, because the Sultan of Kedah borrowed a lot of money for some weddings. I think it's the son and daughter's weddings. So he wanted to, lease. Is around 18th, I'm not sure what the date, but it's around that time. So he was going to, no, I think that one is later. But whatever it is, they were thinking of leasing Langkawi to the Germans. So the British were like, no, that was the cost for the acquisition of from Malay states. But basically, the Germans were already here, and they were, they felt that they have been left out of the whole imperialism, conquest of the rest of the world. The Dutch had their empire, the British had their empire, and where were the Germans? So he actually had access. He was going to bring in the Germans. Yeah.
So he's kind of a foreigner.
Yes, exactly.
Seeking glory and it's like idea.
No, he was actually collecting taxes in Klang. But the people, the Highlanders, they were running down to Selangor because they rather pay taxes to Raja Musa, who is, the son of Sultan Abdul Samad. So it's not that Tunku Kudin is not capable of collecting taxes, but he cannot control all the choke points. So the people can export their tin anywhere. And he wanted the whole, he wanted everything to come down Klang River, and he wanted to collect taxes on that. So he also went to control the Selangor port after the Rinaldo incident. But after Sultan Abdul Samad made it clear that, Sultan Abdul Samad was a bit, because maybe he's so insulated, so not much information gets to him. But Raja Musa was not very decisive prince. But when he treated like that by Tunku Kudin, he got Syed Mashur and I think Raja Mahmud to come and recapture the fort. So he got control of the fort. And then when Tunku Kudin, and he chased Tunku Kudin's people out, And he told Tunku Kudin, this is my fault. It was given to me. I was given control of Selangor, Selangor River, and the tax collection here, and this is what I'm going to do. So Tunku Kudin, you can go back, So Tunku Kudin, everywhere he turned, he was cited because people don't like him. But he took it like, oh, in that case, I have to increase my power. he took it as a challenge. I will show them.
Yeah, we have.
Just one question. What happened to Cik Putih in this episode?
Cik Putih.
Yeah. And the second question, which is not perhaps not related to this, is how did Bukit Ceylon, which I saw on your map, get its name?
That I don't know, but I think there were coffee plantations. There were planters from Sri Lanka. This happened much later. This happened after the British came in, like consolidated, and it must be something to do with. I know from the Para history that there were more like either European planters who had already been in Sri Lanka. They invited them here so that they could start, the agricultural projects. So one of them was coffee. I know that Bukit Well was a coffee estate. I'm not sure about Bukit Ceylon, but it might have something to do with that, and we have to look into that. It's a bit later. Yeah.
Okay, hang on. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Cesar. I just want to ask you, so
Oh, Cik Putih, you have to read the book. No, there's something serious. She actually went to Perak. But there is something even more interesting than that. But I can't tell you because...
okay. So my question is more about the British, because I think you touched on the role of the British in the whole story. Because if you look at the consequences of the Klang Wars and the consolidation of Kuala Lumpur as a capital, and they started building in the 1890s, etc., etc., would you say that this entire thing is a British construct? Because this is what the British are doing entire. You look at India, you look at Myanmar, you look at what they're doing in other places. This could be like a classic British psyop thing, because at the end, this is what they did, right? They seem to be like a small player, but I think they're behind everything.
Yes, exactly. So I was telling you, like W.H. Reid, he's a merchant. He's a merchant, and then and he was the president of the Singapore Chamber of Commerce for the Europeans, of course. And then Davidson was a lawyer, but he had access to a lot of transnational capital. And then the other one is Davidson, and who was the other one? Okay, Reid, Davidson, and then Irving. Irving was a colonial auditor. So you have people from the colonial government, people from there was a merchant who was a lawyer, and they are of course colluding. They're colluding, and then but it is up to 1874 or 1873 there was a policy of non-intervention into the Malay states, because the British were already making money from the strait settlements. But they cannot ignore that the wealth of the Malay states, of Perak and Selangor especially, it was so great that they could not resist. They said, hey, we better take over, And already the straits merchants were the financiers for many of these tin mines. And, they want to get their money back, of course, because every time there's a fighting between these two factions, okay, one will get the money back, the other one doesn't get the money back. So they say, we need British law in the Malay states. And of course, then Swettenham comes and he does the rest.
Yeah.
Federated Malay states,
Hi, my name is Rex. As many have observed, like the Klang War is a non-communal war. So in both coalitions, there are people of different races. And it seems like the motivation, as you have mentioned, is profit, tin mining profits, and their personal vendetta, and of course, Hulu-Hile relation, and with even intra-Malay conflicts. So, but I think this is very different from the Malaysia that we know nowadays. It seems like everything is drawn along communal lines. So would you say that my impression is that is this a product of British intervention? Do you see that connection in the sense that British came in and then they start bringing the racial governance into it, and this was not observed during the Klang War?
Okay, during the Klang War, many people were speaking their own languages. Okay, and the people from China, many of them were from China. They're not actually, they were, incomers. They just came to make money. So if you are the leader of the Huichou, you can talk to everybody. Most people who are like the ordinary miners, they don't know how to deal with other people except on a very superficial level, maybe going to the market and all that. But the leaders, of course, they know how to communicate with each other. And in those days, there was no pretense. They never said we are a multicultural society. And you can say that everyone have a leader. People cannot survive without their own community or without their own leader. So to be thrown out of the community is something very serious. You just cannot survive. You need the community for everything. So you have so and so, he is the leader, he brings 100 men, they are from his community. The leader of the Rawas has 100, 200 men, they are from their Rawas. The Mandalings, you have the Mandalings. And so they form alliances at the top. But their people are the people. Yes, all the different groups exist together. The alliance may be cross-cultural. And there's no reason because, even the Mandalings were investing in Chinese mines. They just want to make money. And if they've met decent people, they invest with them. And, of course, they have to, if something happens, there's a quarrel between two groups, they have to side their own group, the people that they have made a friendship with and business investment with, against the other group. So it was like that. And today, it's this, I think it's more fueled, this kind of rivalry is fueled by politicians, as you know.
Hi, I'd like to ask, so you saw the drawings, right? In that, are those sources, are they publicly available, like online, or is it like you have to be there, you have to scan the book?
You have to.
The book, is it? Okay, and then one more question. It's about Achong. Well, what happens to the Achong? So what happens to the other Chinese secret societies? Do they get absorbed? Do they get broken apart? What happens to them?
What happened to Chong Chong? I can't remember. He disappeared. We don't know whether he died because there was so much fighting. But most of the Kanchen people followed Raja Asal and they ended up in Papan. So at that time in Kinta, there were only two towns, Koping and Papan. And they followed, and they were working side by side, mining side by side with Raja Asal's people.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, could you please clarify why, why Yapaloy and Chong Chong had a disagreement? I couldn't quite understand why Yapaloy was involved in that massacre at the mines.
Okay, we actually just found some new papers. You see, there's always new evidence, and what historians do is that they form a conclusion when they read the available evidence. If new evidence comes along, we have to update, we have to modify, but sometimes it reconfirms what we have been saying. So this paper, what it says, something like Chong Chong was actually a business partner of Yap Aloy, but he was cheated by Yap Aloy. And Yap Aloy took over the mines with the help of a foreigner, Shepherd, but we don't know who is this Shepherd. Okay, so Shepherd maybe got the concession legally or something, and then basically there were mines in Ampang. And so Chong Chong felt cheated and betrayed by Yap Aloy, and from that time he was a bitter enemy of Yap Aloy. Yeah, if you read Middlebrook, but okay, yeah, okay.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. Just a question on, we learned about Yap Aloy and his, in a way, wrongdoings of massacring 300 people, right? Why is it that today we still kind of honor him? We have a road named after him. We have, we have a lot of places that talk a lot about him. I was visiting China in the city of Hakka, Meizo. They also honor Yap Aloy as a person, right? So I'm wondering, why is it that we look up to him that much?
So Yap Aloy was the one who rebuilt Kuala Lumpur with an understanding that the British going to come and take over. So he was actually, there was a different framework, it's a colonial state framework. And so he, of course, he was also, a rebuilder, okay? And after a while, he quarreled with Douglas because he had a personal fund, something like people have to contribute to his personal fund or something like that lah. And but which he claims that he used it for public work, but maybe he used it to pay off his debts or what, we don't know. Okay, so when the British arrived, everything, what they know of Kuala Lumpur, because before that, the British never came to Kuala Lumpur. Okay, maybe Frank Sutherland was passing through, that's about it. But when they arrived, what they found was built by Yap Aloy. That's true. Okay, so he was responsible for the reconstruction of Kuala Lumpur. That cannot be denied. Okay, but to say that somebody who was reconstructing something that was destroyed because of a war, it's just like now, you go and like bomb a place, destroy a place, and then after that, your military contractor also gets the contract for reconstruction. This is happening today. You can see it, right? And that's what happened. So that is his role. Okay, and because the textbooks were all written, during the British time, and Sultan Puasa was there was other things that happened with Sultan Puasa, because he was actually arrested for a putsch, a coup. I mean, which didn't happen. There were rumors of a trans-peninsula uprising. This is in 74 or 75, after the Klang Wars was finished. And because in Perak there was already problems, the Pangkor Treaty has been signed, and then all the people across, Perak, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, and they were going to Sumatra as well for help, and they wanted to rise up against the British. And the British heard about it, they marched up to, I think was it Kajang, Ceras, Kajang. So they found him and Raja Kahar, who is another of Sultan Abdul Samad's son. And Sultan Puasa basically took the fall. So he was there. So they wanted to blame it on Sultan Puasa because they always need to co-opt the royal family. So they co-opted Sultan Abdul Samad's family. They don't want to arrest Raja Kahar, so they arrested Sultan Puasa. And because of that, Sultan Puasa was basically like erased from KL, from Klang Valley. But because he still had the protection of Sultan Abdul Samad, so he didn't have to run to Perak. He was a personal friend of the Sultan, but he became like an unofficial settlement officer. Okay, and he went and he built up Gombak. All the villages around Gombak. That I think he showed the slide this morning, and with the Minangs. So he collaborated with the Minangs. Even though the Minangs first arrived as mercenaries, I forgot to mention that part. Sheikh Muhammad Taib, the chief of the freelancers, he was from Malay Wars, he worked for Sultan Ali, he was in Pahang, he was everywhere, and he arrived on the side of Tunku Kudin. But after that, the Mandalings and the Minangs made up, and they had the mosque, the Java Street Mosque together.
Yeah.
Pardon? You had a comment?
No, you need to read Middlebrook and Gulick about the Kanching massacre. See, the work is all based on Chinese sources. Middlebrook's work on Yap Aloy is all based on Chinese sources that have been lost. So earlier this morning during my presentation, Janet or Sharon? Sharon Carsten, who's a sinologist, looked at the Middlebrook paper. She says it's lost. But fortunately, she made copies of them in the 1980s. And after she went back to the States, she endowed it to me. And I asked her when we met, why didn't you revisit the autobiography, is it? She said, I moved on. I said, you should have. You are the most competent scholar to have revisit and revise the biography on Yap Aloy by Middlebrook and Gulick. But they said, I'll hand them over all these Middlebrook papers to you, and you can do whatever you like with it. Of course, I'm not going to revisit, because then I'll be accused, because I'm the author of Sultan Puasa. The Yap Aloy's family, wants to claim they are the founder and the developer of Sultan Puasa, of KL. If you had come earlier, then you know. So it is Middlebrook and Gulick based on Chinese sources blame Yap Aloy for the Kanching massacre, where a few hundred Hakkas died, his enemies.
I'll take another question.
it was a surprise to me that the early Malays were actually investors in the mines, because we were always sort of, I guess I come from a generation where in history, like the Malays are like more administrative and royal, collecting taxes, and the Chinese were commercial actors. So would you say that this war was actually a decisive turning point where the Malays as commercial actors in Kuala Lumpur, their influence just sort of disappeared after that because they got entangled with the royals, even though they were not royals themselves? But Yap Aloy seemed to have prospered as a commercial actor afterwards, just by switching allegiances from royalty to the British.
Okay, if you look at the Malay states, especially Perak and Selangor, with the tin boom, there were many Malay entrepreneurs. You know, people like Na Ibrahim, you know, and the Panglima Kinta, and they were bringing in Chinese miners. But you know, the Chinese miners actually want to make money and go back to China, you know, and there were some involvement of the Strait Settlements people, but not much at that time, because whoever were in the Malay states have to deal with the Malay sultans. Okay, once you have a colonial framework, you can go to the land office, you can go to, you know, the British officer, whoever you know. You don't have to go to the sultan, and therefore basically the Chinese can prosper under a colonial administration. Before that, they also prospered, but they have to go directly to, you know, the Malay royals and the aristocrats. And of course, they were entrepreneurs. They tried to, actually they sort of knew this was coming, and they were trying to develop as fast as they could before the British started to meddle. But they just ran out of time, you know, and then the British came in very fast, and they brought their own troops. You know, so for example, the Perak War, they brought in how many thousand troops? I can't remember, but thousands of people. They brought in Gurkhas, they brought in people from India, from, you know, these are foreign troops. Of course, the British didn't have to fight, they just bring in their good. I think the first generation, you know, like Khatib Korea, they still made a lot of money. But it's partly because, I don't know, the fragmentation of wealth or whatever. You know, the first generation of Malay entrepreneurs during the British time was still making money. But they were the aristocrats. I mean, it's the thing has changed, right? So now they have to compete with Chinese miners. And if the Malays can invest in Chinese mines, but the Chinese can come in with capital, you know, from the Strait Settlements, and they can make bigger mines and employ more people. So, for example, in Perak, that's the example that we know very well. The Mandarins were miners up to 1890, and then they just could not compete with the Chinese, because the Chinese capitans were running a truck system. They gave them, they made the laborers work, and then they sold them opium, right? And then they took back for whatever they paid for the opium, for the wages, for the provisions and all that. So the workers were really exploited. Some of them exploited to death. And for the Malay leaders or the Mandarin leaders, they cannot do that to their own people. They are rajas. They have an obligation to their people. So they cannot compete with this kind of cutthroat capitalist economy. Okay. Yeah.
One last question before we close. Yeah.
Hi, Salma. I think I'm her generation, that the framework given is the Chinese occupied the commercial sector and the Malay administrative, and then you have this colonizer that intervened and created racial politics. But I'm also learning a lot from Pak Lubis and Salma and doing research on Kajang and Ampang. So actually, if you look at what like Sultanate, and they are intertwined with economic power. And that time, the incentive is taxation as well as trading. So the Malay kingdom or governance deeply involved in trading and taxation. And they work with, and they import the Chinese laborer. And the Chinese came here for survival and for work. And some also become trader. And I think this morning, I wonder whether you were here, if you listened to Pak Lubis about the Mandaling pay mining. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I will just stop here.
Thank you. Let's avoid commentaries. Let's have questions, please.
One last question. Yeah.
Maybe just a simple, not really sophisticated question. In the end, after the British took over the colonial administration, what happened to Tunku Kudin? Like,
Okay. Tunku Kudin, the British said thank you very much. Tunku Kudin had expected to be the head of the puppet regime, but because he is so detested by the Selangor Malays, they had to retire him to Penang. So he got his own hill. Every time you come in from the first bridge, you will see a small hill. It's called Bukit Tunku Kudin or Bukit Udine, which is Tunku Kudin's name. And then he would ride to town on the horse carriage and all that lah. So there are descriptions of his retirement. But he tried to go back to Kedah. He was disowned by his own brother. He was disowned by the Sultan. Because you are the one that brought in the foreigners, the British, to intervene in the Malay states. So don't do that to us. Yeah, so he was actually disowned. So he was no longer in the line of succession. And he had to retire to the straight settlements, where he can have his dogs and his whiskey and all that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Please stay on to mingle if you have any more questions. So a big round of applause. Yeah. Thank you very much. And don't forget to give us your feedback. And if you wish to donate and to scan the KL Discovery Pass. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have 2 more talks tomorrow. Do join us tomorrow. Thank you. Thanks.